Hey up everyone, welcome back to Pommyinoz. We've got a real special video and we've got a special guest. The guests get more famous as the months go on. So that being said, do like and subscribe because you subscribing gets the celebrities, and we've got none other than legend of the YouTube game, Jesse from True Footy. How are you doing, my friend?
Very well, thank you, mate. Yeah, sort of coming towards the end of this football season and having a little bit more free time, which is nice. But it's good to make my debut on the channel. I've been watching you for a while, so it's good to be here.
We really appreciate that. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, this time of year for us guys that do footy? You kind of scratch the surface, don't you, to make content? It's a tough time.
Very true. I happen to really like the draft anyway, but even still, it's quite hard to do daily content. I was doing daily content during the trade period, but it's really not the same at the draft. But I still have a crack anyway. It's good fun.
Yeah, I'm dreading December when there is literally nothing football related. Like when you're going through the AFL website and praying there's a scandal so you can talk about it. You're like, please, someone get drunk or something. Just give me something, one thing.
That's true. I was kind of hoping the Greenwood thing would have happened like mid-December.
It would have been awesome, wouldn't it? Just over Christmas.
Exactly.
Well, we're doing a really exciting game today. What we're doing is, often as a Carlton fan, we claim our players are better than we think. So we've got a West Coast fan here. We're going to try and make a combined West Coast Carlton side. So the rules are simple. We're going to go through the lines, 7 players. We have one that the other person can't kick out of the team. So there will be a representative of both sides. And we'll try and find some happy space. So we'll start off with, I think, probably the hardest part for Carlton, your backline, because I think your backline is one of the best in the league. So talk us through it. What do you like about your own backline?
Well, with the backline and kind of any line with this Eagles team, I feel like it's pretty star-studded, but even though maybe as a unit, it didn't really function that well this year. So it's going to be a hard one throughout this video where I'm making the case for Eagles players who all kind of individually had good seasons, but collectively were terrible. But looking at the Eagles side, I think we've got pretty strong tools in McGovern and Barrass. Obviously, McGovern, he's the second highest paid player in the league, but up until this year, his performance has almost justified that. And then, Shannon Hearn, multiple All-Australians, Brad Shepherd himself, another All-Australian, and then some other role players that I really like in Rotherham in particular, and then Cole and Witherden rounding out that 7. So it is a really strong team. I had to leave out some players that otherwise I wanted to keep, but it's pretty competitive in that back 6 or 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think McGovern as well, he's one that strikes out at me, especially Carlton losing Liam Jones in the last 48 hours. We're looking for another key possession player. Doing this exercise, I thought it would be nice to mirror Jacob Wheatering and McGovern together. It's kind of the perfect complement, isn't it? So, but no, I think the way that you guys move as well is so good. Like, you've got good users there. You build from the back. So I think this will be a tough exercise for me to make a case when our backline sometimes ain't the strongest.
Yeah, I 100%. I do like straight off the bat that Weeder and McGovern pairing. If I had to pick one tall back for the Eagles, based on 2021, I actually think Barrass probably did outperform McGovern at times. I think McGovern was struggling with his body a little bit, but if we're doing this exercise as a best 22, who is the better player for giving FIFA ratings? Who would you rate higher? Then for me, it's definitely McGovern.
No, I love that. I think I'm happy you've said that, because then I don't have to go on camera and kick out a Carlton player for McGovern. So that's good. Here's what they're up against. So we've got some legends here. We've got the new Liam Jones, Lewis Young, Sam Doherty, Nick Newman, Adam Sard, Jacob Wheatering, the legend that is Lockie Plowman, and a young Brodie Kemp. So it's kind of a new backline for Carlton. This is something that we're not used to without seeing Liam Jones. I think Jacob Wheatering, though, him being there just makes the rest look better. It's that brand name, isn't it? It's that brand name that I think it just adds it. But I'd like to see Sard in this team, though. I've got a soft spot for him. But I think all round, Carlton's backline isn't as bad as people think it is.
Yeah, I agree. I think Weedering's a walk-up start. Would never argue Barrass over Weedering. I think he was close to All-Australian, wasn't he? He didn't quite get it from memory, did he? But many people.
Yeah, Weedering got it. It was Jones who didn't.
He did. Okay, I was getting mixed up there. Might have been thinking of the year before where Wiedering missed out. Either way, yeah, he's an absolute walk-up start for this team. I do like the idea of Sard in it. I know that maybe, I don't know how you feel, but did he maybe have the impact that you were hoping in his first season? I'm not too sure. But in terms of skill set, he certainly adds something that that this team doesn't have. And no one really at the Eagles has the sort of line-breaking pace that a Sard, well, few people in the league do. But as a defensive unit, line breaking speed is what we lack. So I could definitely see Sard making his way into this team somehow.
Yeah. Sorry, I totally lied as well. Wiedering made the squad. He didn't make the 22.
Okay.
I just remember, so he's in the conversation. I remember Carlton fans complaining. I do remember watching that on a live. But no, I agree with you. I think Sard probably started off slow at Carlton, but towards the end, he showed what we're paying the money for. I also do like Sam Doherty, former All-Australian. Obviously, we don't know if he's playing this year, but I've put him in on talent alone. I think he would get a gig, if I'm honest, with the Eagles side. I think he'd get a gig for most sides. So they're the two that I'm hoping, outside of Wiedering, I may be able to wedge into the West Coast side. So my non-negotiable, obviously, Jacob Wiedering.
Yep, I think that's fair. I would have been surprised had you said any other answer. And again, Doherty is a player that, if you simply ask the question, does he get a game at West Coast? You think absolutely. It also becomes a little bit tougher when we actually pick these 6 players and you have to eliminate some. It's tough because we've also got a guy, Brad Shepherd, who I'm hoping fits into the team. But he and Doherty both are worthy of a spot. In terms of my non-negotiable, I think I'm going to say McGovern in terms of total reputation and ability. So if we've got the 2 non-negotiable players, it's the key back post, eh?
Well, I mean, we've got you start off with the pillars, don't you? And you work your way back. So I suppose looking at it, who is your next guy that you want to make a case for and put him in the back line? Who are you saying, let's do it?
I think Shannon Hearn still deserves that spot. I think he had 2 amazing years in 18 and 19. 2020 sort of showed a bit of evidence that, or this is the suggestion that maybe he was dropping off a little bit. But I actually think in 2021 he bounced back really strongly. So I actually do genuinely think Shannon Hearn is a lock for this team, to be honest. What do you think?
I would throw Shannon Hearn in on the proviso that we can throw Doc in. And then we've got our 2 little users down the back.
Yeah,
being a bit creative. Yeah, I like that. So we've got 4. We're doing well here. We've got an agreement. Who of that backline there do you think as well you'd make a case for? There's a guy I'm looking at that I do love from you guys.
So it's a tough one. One of my favourite players on the Eagles list is Josh Rotham. I don't know if that's the player you're thinking of, but he's an interesting one where he generally looked like a top 10 player at our club at times and then got dropped later in the year, and that was a real mystery. But if I had to pick one cab off the rank next, I think Brad Shepherd's earned that with that All-Australian in 2020. 2021, I think he had some concussion injuries and issues, rather, and maybe didn't have the same kind of year, but I think on reputation, he should make this side as the next Eagle as well.
Yeah, interestingly, Shepherd was the guy I was looking at. He's a guy that's in a lot of my fantasy sides. I do a lot of dynasty fantasies, and he's one of the guys that I often have a sniff at. So I do like the idea of having him in the team. A bit of Brad Shepherd action. I think he's a very solid player, and I think he's underrated. He's one of the players, when you hear the pundits talk, they don't really talk about Brad Shepherd. And he's a guy that when we play them, he stands out to me. He stands out.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a guy who was All-Australian, but also he's only the 3rd or 4th Eagle that I've mentioned so far, you can see why he sort of gets pushed to the back of that pecking order. But I agree with you. I think Shep should make this team. Got a good ability to play on talls and smalls. He's pretty quick and super reliable, super consistent. So I think he makes his team.
Yeah, and the next guy I'm going to make a case for is, you've mentioned him, is Rotham. I also like Adam Sard. I think Adam Sard and Rotham, this backline would really complement each other. Bit of pace. You've got Rotham's great ball use. I think it would be a nice little thing. But Rotham is a guy that stands out for me as well. He's someone that I think he's really building into his career.
I love Josh Rotherham. I'm a big fan. Yeah, still baffled at the late season decision to drop him out of the team. I think every Eagles fan would raise their eyebrows at that. But yeah, it's sort of like a third tall in the sort of mold of a Will Schofield in the generation previous, but super quick. Obviously, I think one of the quickest Eagles on the list as well, and a great ball user. So yeah, it's a tough one. Are we choosing between he and Sard, or is there room for both of them?
There's room for both. There is. We've done this pretty methodically.
Well, I think, yeah, Rotham's probably the last Eagle that I would consider out of the group that we've got there on the list. So if there's room for both, I like that. And then it's sort of, you look at that team we've picked, we've kind of got a natural third tall in Rotham as well, and then genuine speed and intercept marking. So it's a pretty well-rounded back seven we've just picked.
Yeah, I think we've done really well, to be fair. I think if you actually look at that side, I think that would win flags, to be honest. I mean, Here it is in all of its beauty, the combined backline. That is what we've got. So I think that's a strong 6, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the blend of attributes there with Weeder and McGovern sort of different to each other. And then you've got Rotherham as probably the next tallest bloke, but then, even Shepherd and Hearn take their intercept marks, and there's plenty of rebound with, Doherty and Sard and Rotherham as well. So yeah, no, I think we're kind of
that's a strong backline, actually. Just looking at it, it's not really got weakness, has it?
Yeah, like sometimes when you pick a combined 22, you're sort of picking two players who are similar to each other and maybe don't complement each other, but are technically the best players. But I think the skill sets of that back seven is pretty well diversified.
No, I agree with you. I think that is a very strong team. So we now go to the engine room. And this was the one that when I came up with this idea, I thought, I rate Carlton's midfield, but how does the opposition rate it? Because obviously, when you're finishing the bottom 6, it's hard to make a case consistently. But let's have a look at what Carlton are up against. You've gone strong here. There's brand names galore, isn't there?
There is. And it's a tough one again. I said it about the back line, but the midfield unit at the Eagles, on paper, like, I want to pick all of those guys in this combined team almost. Like, I generally think that if you gave them FIFA ratings, they'd compare very, very favorably. But for some reason, as a midfield unit, it's not the most strongest performing midfield. The one that's a little iffy there is Duggan, because he has been predominantly a defender. Sort of slotted him into my 7th because he's sort of been playing as more of a wingman in the latter stages of his career. But to be honest, I don't think he's actually going to squeeze into this team anyway. So he's kind of just there as a participant.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was similar to you. There's some players that I've wedged into a line just because I love them. But who do you look at there and say, non-negotiable, he is my lock for this side?
It's hard between the first 4, the Shuey, Yo, Kelly, and Gaff. I have to nominate one. Like, I'm the biggest Luke Shuey fan, but I actually think Elliot Yo probably doesn't have the recognition around the league for what he actually adds to West Coast. He's the best and fairest over the premiership year and the year before or year after or something like that. Our best player over at the time we were good. And I think a massive barometer for us, and he's quite a different sort of player, being 6'3" and as athletic as he is. When he gets over his osteitis pubis, you can really see what impact he has. So my non-negotiable here, and it's tough, I'm going to say Elliot Yo.
You see, it's funny you say Yo, because this is a player that he's another Eagle that I look at, and he always reminds me of, he's kind of Cripps without the reputation. Like when I watch him, and it's something I say to Carlton fans when they big Cripps up, he's basically Elliot Yo. He gets the ball and he gives it to a better player and he keeps the chains moving. And I think as a Carlton fan, we underappreciate what Cripps does. And that's proved by Yo, because the AFL media forget about him. But when I watch him, I think that midfield wouldn't get the ball without Elliot.
That's very true. And I think even he's just been a victim of his own versatility at times, when he's sort of pushed into different roles and then he goes quiet perhaps, and people think, Yo's just inconsistent. But I just genuinely think he's so versatile that you chuck him forward for a little while, and that, like I said, it seems like he's going quiet, but he's not. But I think he stands out like a sore thumb in our midfield with his aggression. We don't really have an aggressive, tenacious midfield. He's really quite on his own in that respect. So I think he's probably our most important. Well, other than Nick Nat, he's probably number 2 for me.
No, I'd agree. I think the one as well that would love at Carlton, if you gave me an open checkbook, is Tim Kelly. I'm a huge Kelly fan, and I know he hasn't quite, probably a bit like Adam Sard, probably hasn't hit the heights that you were expecting yet, but
Mm.
he's a supreme footballer.
Yeah. He's a kind of a victim of his own standards a little bit, and there's also the other factors. In his own defense, he came from a Geelong side that was pretty star-studded, and it's you can expect as the third or fourth, fifth midfielder at Geelong, he was always going to, look like the cream on top. And then he comes to West Coast, where we've had significant injuries over the last couple of years, and he's had to do more of the heavy lifting and hasn't stood out as much. But yeah, I think he's a very, very good player. And whether he's the next best player on that list, I'm probably more of a shoey man, but it's pretty tight. Like, you could argue either way.
I've got to say, you've built a strong list, and the boys who are trying to break in, here we are. We've got brand names, and we've got some new players here as well. So we've got Cripper, we've got Kennedy, Hewitt, Chera, Big Zachy Williams. I've managed to throw him back in the midfield, Sam Walsh and Ed Kerner. So, I mean, who stands out here?
I think the obvious one has got to be Walshy. It's got to be. Like, out of all the players we've just talked about, Walsh had the best season of them all, and he's probably the youngest player just about on this list. Including Chera. He's actually younger than Chera. I think Sam Walsh is the clear standout. Is that what you would have said?
Yeah, I was debating making Cripps my guarantee. And because I was like, he's got to pick Walsh. Like, it's a cheat code. No one's going to argue Walsh. But Walsh would be my guy that I'm locking away to join Elliot Yeo in our midfield. I think he's not only the best young player in the comp, but I also think he's top 5 in the league. So I think he would be a walk-up start for any side. I think the way he's playing, it's just a shame he got drafted by Carlton when he did, because he may have been on the precipice of a flag, I'd say. So now he's got to work hard and get us there. But I think he'd love playing for your midfield, I think, Walsh.
Yeah, he's got that sort of outside class as well that we seem to value. I think he would literally excel with it at any club, to be honest. I think with all due respect to Carlton, if you can do what he's doing at his age with a team that's obviously hasn't been in finals, it's a massive testament to what he's been able to do.
I do think when we looked at your team, your midfield as well, I think if he'd been born into that midfield, he may have found a Brownlow already, because the heavy lifting, like you were saying, he's got Yo, he's got Shuey who does that as well. He's got a lot of players to protect him, where 100%. At Carlton, he's been the main man, really.
Yeah, and consistent. So, like, he would actually stand out of the Eagles because he shows up just about every game, whereas as much as I love our boys, they'll have 2 good games and then one will go quiet and the other 2 will stand up or whatever. So, with Walsh's consistency, he probably would have won a Brownlow if he was at West Coast.
No, I love it. So the next guy I'm going to make a case for is a WA boy, Cripper. I know you've got his cousin, haven't you, Jamie? I'm sure we'll talk about him later. But I think Cripper would love to play with you. I think 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that if West Coast recruited Pat Cripps, he would be a best 22 player. So when you answer that question, it becomes obvious that he's going to make this team. But it's a tough one with Cripps because obviously he hasn't really played to the standards that he's set for himself in the first 4 or 5 years of his career or whatever it is, or 6 or 7 years even. But I think regardless, you make a case for him here, definitely. I think. How confident do you think you are of him coming back to his best form?
I'm 100%. I think that by the sounds of it last year, T kind of alluded to it on his way out, that there was injury issues. I think he's been forced to play injured. And I think Voss, if he's got any sense, isn't going to play Cripps 70%. Because as you know with Elliot Yeo, the job they do, if they start getting injured, they're going to get injured forever. So you've got to make sure they're doing that job as a battering ram, fully fit, because it's just asking for an injury. So I think he's too talented to drop down. I think now he's got talent around him, you'll see him flourish a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. I hope as well that he comes back to his best form as well. He's a very likable player, Paddy Cripps, and yeah, the more we talk about it, the more convinced that yeah, he's an absolute walk up start for this team.
I love it. So we've got three. Who's your next guy? Because you have got that front four there, the first four.
So
I'd love
sorry, have
all
we?
of them playing for us.
Yeah, that's it. So we've got Yo, Walsh, and was it Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one for me has got to be Luke Shuey. I think there's no doubt he makes this team for me, to be honest. Again, a player who's barely played football in the last 2 years, but when he has played, he's been best on ground at times. That both his first game of the year against Port Adelaide, he had like 35, then got injured in the last minute. And then in the final round of the year, he's finally back in his peak fitness and he gets 36 or 35 in the midfield as well. He's a player that I don't think is necessarily slowing down. It's just that he hasn't been able to get on the park. And one of my favourite players to watch. So he's an absolute lock for me. What about you? What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think that Shuey as well, he's just a natural accumulator. And we've got Walsh there. He's finding the ball 25, 30 times. Shuey there as well, looking to spread the play. We've got Cripper and Yo there getting the ball out to these guys. I think it's a no-brainer as well when you add Kelly's class. I do like Shuey. I'd also make an argument. I hate to do this, but Gaff. I'm a huge Gaff fan. And I don't think Carlton have a wingman who even competes to the level of Gaff. So I think the fact that Gaff as well, I'd be making a case for you. Gaff and Shuey would be locks for me in this side.
I genuinely find it hard to split any of the four Eagles that we've lifted there. So Shuey, Yo, Gaff, and Kelly. If you ask me to give them FIFA ratings, which I keep going back to, probably 1 or 2 points splits the four. So I agree. Gaff would certainly be the next cab off the rank. I just favour Shuey to him as well. I think Gaff's kind of suffered a little bit. I think he's been playing a bit more inside than he's probably suited to over the last couple of years and hasn't been able to demonstrate his best attributes. But it's still, in terms of his production and what he's capable of, I agree. I think he makes this side too.
Oh, he's a supreme player, and I think, like you say, I'd then make a case if we have Shuey and Gaff, we have to bring in another Perth boy in Chera, and then I think we've got the perfect midfield in the terms of we've got Gaff and Mr. Chera could occupy the wings with them other legends, which I think would make this team unstoppable.
I agree. I think Chera's. I love Chera. I think he's an absolute gun player. It's an interesting one. Just to make this one a little bit spicy, though, when I'm thinking about it, with Chera versus someone like a Sheed, okay, if we're basing it on potential and what they're going to be like in 2 years, then I think Chera is the choice. But I think Sheed is actually a very good player at the moment. I think towards the end of the year, another player who suffered from injury and he's in the final round, he was terrible. But if we're basing it on FIFA ratings right now, I think Sheed could actually have him covered. So I think that could be one for a spicy debate.
I think that's a great argument, actually, because obviously Carlton fans probably don't mind Sheed as well, because our probably most famous moment of the last decade was Sheed kicking that goal. So it's something that we do love the Eagles. I think it's a great debate because I think obviously with Sheed as well, he's probably got more credits in the bank in the terms of big games. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were picking a team, he said he's done it on the biggest stage of them all, where Chera's just got maybe a couple of wins against Gold Coast under his belt. So it's a good argument that in that terms, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you summed that up perfectly. I think the credits in the bank is what gets Sheed makes the argument for Sheed there. Like I think Chera's skills and his long-term sort of upside is certainly higher than a Sheed at the moment. But in terms of what he's actually produced right now, I think he's on the cusp of making it big. But right now, I think maybe Sheed actually has him covered. But you could argue either way. I'm not going to argue that one too strong. I just thought it was worth mentioning.
No, I actually, you know what? I'm going to go against my better judgment, and you've sold me there. I actually think Sheed should be in this team. I think you're spot on. I think if we're doing it fairly, if you were picking it today, you probably would say that Sheed would be, if it was a choice, you'd probably throw Sheed in. So, I mean, that's what the final backline midfield looks like. That is a very strong midfield, to be fair.
It is, and very West Coast prevalent, which is again funny because the midfield unit hasn't played well, but I think it's probably more down to game style and coaching rather than the actual players that we have on the list. So and some availability as well, because I don't think I've ever seen 5 of those Eagles there playing the same team for a long time.
Well, I think it's a case as well that I think that when I look at the Carlton midfield, I think it's potential. So I think that if we maybe did this and we froze the West Coast Eagles players in time, I think 2 years' time, it would probably be a better argument, particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cherr's probably half a season away from cracking this team, to be honest. Just to be clear on that, I do like Cher. I'm not trying to underrate his ability, but for all the reasons we said, just if we're picking a team right now, then she probably just still takes that.
No, I agree. There's our combined. That's our 7 for the midfield, and then we get on to probably where games are won. The midfield are kicking to 7 of these blokes. So talk to me. It's a familiar forward line to Carlton fans. So talk to us about your forward line.
Yeah, well, it's a forward line that's arguably been our strongest line over the last few years, and yeah, in terms of talls and mediums and smalls, there's a lot of talent there. I think one player that, at the risk of going on a tangent, that it's in there that we've sorely lacked over the last couple of years is Willie Rioli, and I think he's absolutely one of my favorite players and a more important player to the way we play than people realize. But in terms of the talls, you've got Darling, Kennedy, and Allen. I think everyone sort of respects what they can produce. Liam Ryan was an All-Australian half forward last year, and Jamie Cripps is one of those classic. This player on our list is underrated. He's the guy for us because he's just such a absolute workhorse in that forward line, and his skill set is a little bit different to any other player we've got there. And Petrevski-Seton as well as a player slotted in there because it's a little unclear where exactly he's going to play his football for West Coast, but I think he was sort of highlighted as a midfielder forward. I couldn't crack him into that full-time midfield spot, so he sort of takes my bench spot as an Eagle.
No, and yeah, anyone who's watched Blue Abroad or Pommyinoz will know I've complained about seeing SPS in the back line for 2 years. So to see him in his mid-forward position breaks my heart. In the end of that, you've tagged him in where he should play. I agree with your synopsis. I think Jamie Cripps is a player that I've said Carlton need for a long time as well. That defensive pressure that forward who he stays on his man. He doesn't let line breakers get away from him. I think that's something that at my team personally, we sorely lack. Someone that can make defense start in the forward 50. And that's what Cripps, he's a genius at doing that. It's hard to get away from him. I've seen Doc struggle against him. I've seen all of our defenders struggle to get away from Jamie Cripps. And he's a guy that instantly I look at your team sheet and I'm like, we're in for a tough day. And that's before we get to your Ryans, your Riolis, and then your 2 pillars in Darling and Kennedy. So it's a strong forward line. I've got to say, it's probably one that you don't think is the strongest, but then you see it, you're like, Jesus, it is pretty good.
I think when Kennedy retires, we're going to see just how important he is to the way we play. In terms of there'll be games where he'll just turn a half opportunity into a goal more often than people realize. So when he eventually sails off into the sunset, it's going to hurt big time.
And I'm also a huge fan of Oscar Allen. I've got to say, he's a guy that last year, he kind of really hit the level, didn't he, at times for you guys? And he looks a quality player. Yeah,
I agree. I am a huge fan of Allen. I think towards the back end of this year, if people were paying close attention, you could see every week Allen had a new bandage on, and it was like his elbow was completely in a wrapped up. He was wearing a cast. A player that is probably a victim again of his own versatility, because the fact that he's 191 centimeters and we've been chucking him in as the second ruck for large parts of his career just speaks to how good this kid is. Not a lot of players of his attributes could do that. So long story short, what I'm saying is towards the end of the year fell away a little bit, but I think long-term projects as a potentially elite forward, I hope.
So which of these guys here are you locking into our combined forward line?
There's a few nominations, mate, but I think I'm going to have to go with the traditional Josh Kennedy route. I think he's still so good. He can play, on one leg and still be. Well, he kicked 45 goals odd this year, and obviously, playing through some injuries. And honestly, the supply from the Eagles midfield this year was absolutely atrocious. So I think Josh Kennedy still takes the cake for me.
No, I think Carlton fans won't be too upset as well, because obviously we got Judd for Kennedy, but it is one of the things that burns when you see him doing the things he does for you guys. When it's taken us a while to find a forward that can do it. But talking about forwards that can do it, we have got them now. So obviously, we're starting off with my favourite, Charlie Curnow. For me, I think Charlie Curnow is, and this is a controversial opinion, I think he is, on his day, the best forward in the competition. I don't think there is any forward who can match what a Charlie does on his day. His versatility, his speed, his ground ball. Not many forwards can kick off one step like he did in his return game, 60 metres. He's special. And in my opinion, I know I love Charlie. He's behind me. I do love him more than his dad. I do personally think there is no forward like him in the competition. I think he could be top 5 players in the league if he stays fit. And I love Charlie.
Yeah, I can see why. You can see the attributes there. He is quite a unique style forward. I think back to, I think it was 2016 or 15 maybe when he got drafted, and the draft profiles were like, he's kind of a key forward, but he's also kind of a massive midfielder. So when you've got a player who can has a range of attributes, he's always going to be dangerous. Again, just a player that's suffered so much through injury that it's a hard one to rate, but I can totally see why you're optimistic as you are.
It might be blind faith. It might be blind faith. The Charlie love knows no bounds. But then we've got a few guys that I think are underrated. You talked about Jamie Cripps. Matty O's here. He was our leading tackles inside 50. He scored a few goals as well. He really came on from having a few years as a Category B basketballer, learning his trade. He's really taken that Carlton small forward. He's kind of like the Audi version of Jamie Cripps at the moment. He's not quite the full brand model, but he's a guy that really impresses me. And we've got Zach Fisher there. Is he a forward? Is he a midfielder? We don't know. But I thought it was an interesting debate. Being a Perth boy, I thought UWA fans may have a bit of a soft spot for him. But then we've got Harry, who is our key pillar. And I think there's no doubt about his class. And then to finish it off, we've got Jack Martin, David Cunningham, and we've got the lesser talented McGuffin brother.
Yeah, Zach Fisher in particular is from the Perth Demons, and we don't produce a lot of talent out of Perth Demons, maybe a couple of later ones, but so a player that I've always sort of liked from afar. Is it fair to suggest your non-negotiable is probably going to be Mackay, or were you saying it was Curnow?
I'm knocking in Curnow purely because I'm backing in. You have to take Mackay. You can't not.
I know. You've done me dirty there. That's a dog act. Because I also think that the Eagles' 2 talls also should make this side. So we're suddenly looking at a team with 4 key position forwards.
Well, I mean, Carlton 2018, we were used to seeing 4 big tall guys and no small forwards, so we could do it. But, I mean, I do think that obviously, I think if you had Darling, obviously you're going to go Darling and I'm saying Mackay. I do think you've got enough there, though. I will say this, that I think Charlie is good enough to play across the half forward. And I've seen Darling, he drops into that role as well. They're not slouches. So I don't mind if we go with the tallest forward line in the history of the AFL.
It kind of reminds me of those days where the Eagles played Dean Cox, Scott Lysett, and Nick Naitanui in the same team, all 3 ruckmen. But look, I mean, Mackay makes this team undoubtedly. In fact, I'm surprised he's not the first one picked. He's just won the Coleman medal from 19 games. So there's no debate there. I've locked in Kennedy. So, Curnow and Darling are the next 2. That is a tall list.
To be fair, we've got that midfield, though, kicking to them. So, we probably just need strong marks and we'll be fine. I don't think the ball's going to hit the ground too much. Well, obviously, we've got 3 positions left. And as a Carlton fan, I'll say we need smalls. So, I'm looking at you guys really here because we've got probably 1 natural small. But I do love Flying Ryan. Obviously, we've lost Betts. We need a bit of excitement. I think he would be a walk-up start. Yeah,
Liam Ryan has astonished me with the way he's come on, to be honest. So we drafted him as a high production, exciting forward from the waffle, kicked 71 goals, but, obviously it's a big step up to AFL. had a pretty serviceable first year where he was best 22 for the whole, grand final side. But in the absence of Willie Rioli, who I thought was the far superior player, Liam Ryan has stood up to be every bit as good as Rioli. In fact, he's won an All-Australian, so you'd argue he's been better. And just super consistent. I think maybe this year he suffered a little bit from maybe some increased attention. The Eagles didn't have as many targets up forward, and obviously he's coming off an All-Australian year. But either way, he's just an absolute match winner. And I think, in terms of both his attributes, but also his ability, he's a lock for this team.
No, I agree. We'll throw him in there. So we've got our 5. We've got Kennedy, Kerno, Darling, Harry, and big Liam Ryan. So we've got 2 to finish. Who are you looking at for the Eagles? Who would you be making a case for?
Oscar Allen? No, I'm just kidding. Just to add another key forward in there.
How tall would you be?
Look, if we're talking like who I would pick Rioli, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go for Jamie Cripps here for the reasons we suggested earlier, as that, yes, he is quite a defensive lockdown player, but he's also, a pretty solid contributor in terms of goals as well. I think he's quite well-rounded. He's a player that, when we're not traveling too well, the fans go to straight away and say, drop Cripps, what's he done? But like you said earlier, like he just does those defensive jobs that people don't see on TV, that you couldn't appreciate. So that's why he doesn't get dropped even when he's not kicking goals. But long story short, I think Jamie Cripps as an enforcer type makes this team. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I'm 100%. I think it's something that, like you say, it's an unsexy role. And I think a lot of players in the AFL get punished. Your Yos, they get punished. I think Cripps last year got punished because he wasn't beating 8 men and kicking a goal from 70. People say he's lost it. But you actually look at the dirty stuff he's doing, it kind of goes missing. And Jamie Cripps fits that bill. He, like you say, he doesn't kick goals, but he's probably had 6 tackles in the forward 50. That's created 3 goals, and you don't get a stat for that, unfortunately. So, no, I was going to throw Jamie Cripps in without much of an argument, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you agree, because he's one that I've sort of been defensive of when the team's struggling. And I think he's going to, when he retires, he's not, he's 30, maybe 30 next year. When he goes, we're going to feel it. And that's when, people will really notice what he adds to our team.
No, I'm with you. And we've got 1 spot left. I would nominate here, going back to the Carlton list, I'd love to see if we could throw big Matty Owies in as the apprentice of Mr. Jamie Cripps.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of happy to defer to your knowledge on that, because I know who Owies is, but I wouldn't be able to give you a really good analysis of what he offers. If we're picking the team that is as tall as we have, and then we've got maybe a medium small option in Ryan, maybe having another sort of fleet-footed guy who can add a bit of defense to a team that's probably a forward line rather that doesn't have a lot of defensive pressure, then I think you've picked the right type of player. No one at the Eagles really stands out for me. I do believe that if Rioli had been playing the last 2 years, he would be a walk-up player for this side, but can't make a really strong argument for that when a guy hasn't played since the 2019 final series. So happy to defer to you on that one.
He is an absolute great player, though, Willie Rioli. And I think the AFL is less for not having him in. And I think I speak for everyone. He's one of them players that all the Rioli's the name, doesn't it? It makes you turn the TV on. You know what you're getting. You know you're going to get something. So
that's right.
Is he back this year? Does he look like he's going to participate in a full year?
Well, he was eligible to play round 23 and then had a hamstring complaint. He was actually going to be picked. So, yeah, fully eligible, and haven't heard anything to suggest he's not fit. So I think he plays round 1.
Well, I mean, that'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to do this exercise next year to see who has done it. But here is our combined forward line. We've gone tall. We should have maybe thrown Mitch McGovern in this, because if we'd had Oscar Allen and Mitch McGovern, this could be the tallest team in the history of the world. But it's a very strong and versatile forward line, I think.
Well, you also need a second ruck in there, to be fair. We haven't picked a second ruck, have we? So who are we nominating as the second ruck?
Oh, it's going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, Harry's done it every so often. Yeah. I've seen Josh Kennedy go in there. I think Darling's flirted through there. Kerno sometimes got lost.
There. Darling's listed at like 191. I think he's probably a little bit taller than that. But you're right. He's done some forward half rucking. It seems bizarre to have the Coleman medalist as second ruck, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it could happen at Carlton because we are We do have a ruck crisis. We only have 2 recognised rucks and a project. So you probably will see Harry as the Coleman medalist rucking every so often, which is baffling to me as well. But the chances are. But talking about rucks, I reckon this was the one I was dreading, to be honest. So we'll get it out of the way. Carlton's is obviously Tom de Koning. Young, raw, versatile. It doesn't really matter, though, when you're bringing this guy to the party, does it? Really?
Yeah, that's right. I think I sort of hinted at it before. I think if you had to pick one MVP for the Eagles, Nick Nat is over the last 2 years. It's been really satisfying to see as a fan of a player who's kind of, took a long time to get respected. He's been a player that, because of his attributes being so unique, is so untraditional as a ruckman, that it took a long time for people to think, oh, this guy is actually adding a lot to his team. It's not just a highlights package, but he's just become extra consistent. We've really found out a way to sort of sustain him over a game where he plays 60% in the side and on the field rather, and impacting with clearances as well. I think he's one of the most prodigious clearance winners in the game per game. So it's been a thrill to see Nat Nui sort of finally hit his potential, and hopefully he can retire with a flag someday soon.
I've got to say, I'm not even going to argue this one. I think it's a lock. I think I'd be a moron to even suggest any argument, because I agree with you. He's one of them players as well that, as an opposition fan, you kind of don't begrudge him doing well, which I find hard to do, being European like anyone who's not my own. But there's something about him, isn't there? He's just a nice guy. You want him to do well. You want him to play well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, he's a player that even still, I hear from Fremantle fans in particular, not all of them, but some, he's just a highlights package. But we don't think about, maybe the effect on these players when they don't get the respect, throughout their careers. So I'm just really happy to see Nick Nat starting to really, really, establish himself as an absolutely, certainly a great of the West Coast Eagles, that's for sure.
I've got to say, I hate to say, I actually think Nick Natanui is the best ruckman in the competition. I think when you actually judge it on the whole ruck job, I think he would be ahead of Gawn and Grundy, in my opinion. I think for what he can do, I think you might argue that Gawn's a better hit-out ruckman. Grundy does more work around the ground. But I think if you take the job as a whole, I would be taking Nick Natanui over both of them.
Yeah, it's a big call because Gawn did have an enormous year. So as an Eagles fan, I'll sort of refrain from that argument just because I'll look biased. But I don't think it's the most crazy call at all because, again, he's just such a hard ruckman compared to other rucks because he's so unique. So it's not like we can sort of compare objectively, this player gets more possessions, more meters gained, more versus, hit outs to advantage. He is so unique that it's hard to make a compelling case on numbers. It's just going to be the eye test. So, but in terms of influence over the game, he's barely missed over the last 2 years, and I shudder to think where our ladder position would have been if he didn't have Nick Natanui in 2021.
He's a supreme footballer. I don't think anyone can argue that. Well, that is mine and Jesse's team. Thank you very much for joining me, Jesse. In the description is True Footy's channel. Please give it a like and a sub if you haven't. I imagine most of you had, but it's splendid content. It is real good content. You're doing a lot of live streams as well, I've noticed. Getting up late to watch the cricket, which is phenomenal effort.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate you tuning in the other night. That was good fun. But yeah, no, thanks for having me on the channel. I'm a huge supporter of what you do as well. You make great, unique content on this platform as well. And this video was heaps of fun. So always happy to do stuff like this.
Well, we loved having you, Jesse. Well, until next time, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.